each speaker has been up, they've asked if there are any healthcare people in the audience and other locations. How many pest control people are here in the audience? Where are we? Okay. These are the people that are on the front line of the bed bug problem every day. We're the ones going in and out of the homes, the apartments, the hospitals, and all the other areas where these bed bugs are. Okay. Today, I want to talk about what's going on with the research. We got behind on studying this bed bug because it had been gone for so long. And why do research? Why keep all this up? Well, this gentleman, Peter Hodis, is both a doctor, a medical doctor, and a scientist, a PhD. And he writes that just as other global diseases were once a problem and thought under control, we sort of forget about it, and we don't pay a lot of attention to it. And he says to stay one step ahead of any of these disease organisms, bedbugs included, you've got to sustain research. You've got to keep current as to what is going on. Put a little bit differently, a gentleman here, Stephen Doggett, is from down under. He's from Australia, the University of Sydney, and his comment is there's a lack of understanding of the ecology and the biology of bedbugs. And that understanding is absolutely essential for us to be able to deal with them and control them. The lack of knowledge isn't surprising, because what happened? Bedbugs just disappeared from the Western world. America, Europe, even Australia, for 50 years, bedbugs were not an issue. So once they weren't an issue, nobody was studying them. The universities weren't investing any money in the research as to what this creature is all about. So we went into the year 2000, basically 50 years behind in knowing about this creature. The catch-up started about 2001, 2002, and now it is just going like mad. A whole lot of universities are doing these studies. So let's see what's going on. First, what is research? Research is we'll just read it here. It's a diligent and systematic inquiry or investigation into a subject in order to discover or revise facts, theories, or applications. Gene White was up here earlier. He said, the bed bug hasn't changed. It's the same bug. It's our understanding and knowledge of it is what needs to change. We need to learn more. Well, there's two kinds of research that are going on. One is your pure research, done mostly in universities, in labs, not the real-life situation. They could be studying chemicals, methods, applications, habits. That's done by the PhDs of the world and their graduate students. Then there's this applied research where they take some of the things from the lab and they go out and they practice with it. Again, it's not exactly the real world situation, but it's close. And in the course of the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to try to show and talk to you about some of the research, both pure basic research and some of the applied research that's going on. So let's see what we got. Well, here we go again. Who's doing the research? There's the universities right now that are right at the forefront of the research. Everything from Ohio State, Purdue, where that's Gene's alma mater, Virginia Tech, Rutgers we'll hear about a little bit, North Carolina State, even in England, the University of Sheffield is doing research on bedbugs. Who is doing it? Susan Jones from Ohio State, and we'll present her findings here in a little bit. Tim Gibb at Purdue University, Deanie Miller, she's a PhD and a professor at Virginia Tech. She's out in the field. She's inspecting a bed turned over in an apartment. That's an example of the applied research. And then there's Lou Sorkin up there from the American Museum of Natural History in New York. He's maintained a colony of bedbugs, but bedbugs get hungry. He has to feed them, and that's what he's doing right there. That's part of research. Where do you find out about the research? Well, there's several conferences you can go to. The Bedbug Summit has been held once a year for the last 3 years. brings together a lot of these people to talk and update us on it. Our industry publications, the magazines we read, our National Pest Management Association, some of the academic journals, Journal of Economic Entomology, Medical Entomology, and even the CDC publishes information and publishes the research. Okay. So let's research. Here's the first one. Total release foggers, these things, do they work against bedbugs? How many people take these and want to set them off in their home or apartment and think that's going to solve the problem? They've used them for years. They sell thousands and thousands of them all across the country every day. Do they kill bedbugs? Okay, well, Susan Jones wanted to study it. She wanted to do research, not just wonder about it or think about it. Let's actually study it. How does she do it? She went out and bought 3 brands of aerosols. She collected real bedbugs from Columbus. Just went out and got them trapped, brought them into her lab. She also brought in some bedbugs from what's known as the Harlan strain. Now that Harlan strain is Harold Harlan. He was an Army medical entomologist. Back in the 70s, he started raising bedbugs. He's kept these bedbugs alive for 35 years, easily 35 years. He feeds them, keeps them in his house, and he feeds them. But these bedbugs are pure. They haven't been exposed to anything. And they use them as a test to see if the materials will kill his strain. Then they compare that against the ones that are collected in apartments and in homes and every other place. So she's got 2 different kinds of bedbugs. She put these bedbugs out in the open and took some other bedbugs and covered them over with a little sheet of paper or a piece of cloth. She wanted to simulate the real world. She took the foggers, set them off in the room, let them go, waited the amount of time that the label says on the fogger, then went and collected the bedbugs and started analyzing and studying them. Well, did it work? Well, Susan wanted to be here today, but she's down at the same conference Gene came from, and she couldn't make it. So let's see what she says.
Homeowners, residents are thinking, this is an option for me. I don't have to spend the hundreds of dollars. Well, you going with this $10 or less product is basically you've taken your money and you've thrown it away, because our research shows that they aren't killing the bed bugs that are hiding. They aren't even for susceptible bugs. They will kill those, but we've done tests on these bugs genetically, and almost every bug that we have looked at from Ohio is resistant to pyrethroids, and pyrethroids are the active ingredient or the chemical that is in the.
We wanted to summarize her research supports these total release foggers. When that mist goes up into the air, it lacks the ability to penetrate the cracks and crevices where the bedbugs hide. Second, the field collected bedbugs, those are the Columbus bedbugs. They were resistant to those chemicals, and even after being exposed to the mist from the fogger for 2 hours, they still didn't die. Third, and this is even, I think she's going to have to do more research on this, but the potential behavioral effect, and her little asterisk there says, increased locomotor activity. What does that mean? Big term, increased locomotor activity. It means they move around. She observed that when the foggers were going off, the bedbugs were moving around. That's a behavioral change. Does that mean that this fogging, these bombs or foggers, does that mean it chases bedbugs? That's still a question mark. And it's something that more research is going to need to be done on. Because we're behind in the research now, and it's just another topic that she and the people in her lab would be able to work on. Bottom line on her research is, don't recommend that people use foggers. Discourage them from doing that, because it's not going to solve the bedbug problem. Okay. Next researcher, and I have to probably add the comment. I am not a researcher. I'm up here as a reporter trying to take the information that we've listened to and read at different conferences and in some of these publications, and just see how does it apply to us in the real world. Well, here's a gentleman, this Michael Siva-Jofi. He has spent 20 years of his life studying bedbugs in a lab in the University of Sheffield in England, to which my thought was, get a life. But he is an expert on this creature. And his comment is, why do you study him if it's not to find ways to kill him? And he is looking at this bedbug over these last 20 years to figure out how is it vulnerable? How do you attack it? So we can find ways to control it. Well, I'm going to just summarize some of his findings because after listening to him for 2.5 hours at the conference, I mean, you came away with this bedbug is really a complex creature. They have an immune system, and this is particularly the female bedbug, has an immune system that produces proteins and other substances to offset the germs that it's exposed to. Remember, bedbugs live in a real hostile environment. It's dirty. Our beds, I mean, all that stuff that we have. This bedbug is poking us. It's sticking its stylet, its mouth parts right into your skin. So whatever germs and viruses and microbes we have on us, it's taking in. And if you remember, Gene talked about the mating, how the male bedbug mates with the female bedbug. The big term there is traumatic insemination. And it's traumatic because he basically stabs the female bedbug. And again, introduces the possibility of germs and microbes getting inside this bedbug. Well, it has an immune system to counteract it. It protects itself from all the bad stuff that's in the environment. Okay. So what does that have to do with killing bedbugs? Maybe, just maybe, science and research will come up with a way not to spray pesticides on a bedbug, but to attack its immune system in some way, shape, or form. That might be a control method down the road. Okay. What else in his lab? Some other findings that he had, and this has to do with bedbug movement. The big term there is refuge dynamics. Where does it seek shelter? This first one is sort of intuitive. It says, the more habitats that's available, okay, what habitat, that's our stuff, and the clutter that's around, and in extreme cases, the hoarding that we heard about. The more habitat that's available, the more likely they're going to move out to fill that space. If they got a place to hide, they're going to move out and they're going to hide in there. And that's sort of intuitive, and we've seen that in our real world. The more habitat there is for bedbugs, the less likely they are to disperse. One of the big questions is, why do bedbugs move around? And we're going to see a couple different pieces of research that are going to talk about this, but he found if they've got a lot of places to hide, they basically don't move around a lot. Well, that's telling us, clean up the places to hide, eliminate it. And it's going to have to do with picking up clutter, and we'll have a little bit more on that in a few more slides. Another thing he found is the presence of males, or the abundance of males in the environment, did not seem to cause females to disperse. Now, this goes contrary to what we've been thinking in the industry. They've talked about bedbugs being up higher on the walls or being farther away from the bed. And there's been some thought that because these males attack and repeatedly attack females in an attempt to mate with them, that the females say, enough of this, and move out. He found in a lab, again, that's pure research, that that wasn't the case. That they're not going to move around just because of the males. All right, what does all that mean? All this means is we don't know a lot about the bed bug. This is a real complex creature. We're still not certain, where does it go to find harborage? Why does it go to where it goes? How does it survive? His 20 years of research, it's going to take 10 or 15 more years before methods and procedures can be developed so we can control them. All right? Go to something that's more practical. This gets into the applied research thing. Rick Cooper, who's a PhD candidate at Rutgers University, and some of the other speakers have talked about his work, wanted to study how do bed bugs move in a high-rise building, and how do you detect it in a high-rise building. So to study it, he chose a high-rise that was an affordable housing for the elderly. And while that is not the actual building, it's a replica of something, and we have plenty of buildings like that right here in Cleveland. 8, 10, 12 stories, 200, 300 suites, housing mostly elderly, and my experience is those buildings have bed bug issues. 224 apartments. Management in the building knew that 16 of them had bed bugs. And Rick was going to do this inspection by using these things. Some of you might have seen them in the hallway, and we talked about them. These are climb-up interceptors. And he's going to place them around in the apartment. He put them in the apartments, came back 14 days later and checked the interceptors. And if he didn't find any bed bugs, then they went and made a visual inspection to see if they could find anything. Now, how do these work? These are just placed in the apartment. How do they work? Well, bed bugs crawl around. When they crawl around and they come to something like this, they'll go up. They have a rough edge on the outside, they can go up. When they get into this interceptor, they can't get out. It's slick plastic and it's coated. What's it coated with? Talcum powder. It just makes it very, very slippery. And bed bugs crawling into here can't get out. Well, I'll show you on a bed leg in a moment. Okay, where did he put them? He put them under bed legs, put them next to furniture, put them next to clutter around the bed. He put 32 of them in each apartment. Now, this is where his research sort of departs from reality. Putting 32 of these in an apartment could be overkill. But again, he's doing a piece of research, and when you're doing that, you can set any parameters you want. So 32 of them were put around, comes back 14 days later and looks at it. What's going on? What do we find? The 16 apartments that had bed bugs, they found them. They found 39 more apartments in that building that had bed bugs, bringing the total of 55 apartments. 55 out of the 232 had bed bugs. How many did management know about? 16. Okay. Of the 55, 51 of them, they found the bed bugs here. The other 4, they had to do the visual inspection. Okay. So what's the relevance of that? What's the practical application of his research? Is interceptors are very good at capturing bed bugs that wander in an apartment. Now, why does a bed bug wander? It's either going to wander to you to get a meal, or it's going to wander away from you to go find a place to hide and digest the meal. The other very relevant thing, and this is for the apartment industry, and we haven't asked about that. How many people are in the apartment industry in the room? Okay. Do you know what's going on in every one of your apartments and suites? Here, 71% of the infestations you didn't even know about. That's 71%, or 39 of those suites, are just festering little bed bug problems all through your building, and you don't even know about it. How are you going to find that out? That's where early detection, or finding ways to detect it, is important. Now, what did he find in the traps? This is a sample of a trap that was caught. 84% of the bed bugs in a trap were nymphs, the young ones. They're not adults yet. On our penny here, they're these right over here. First, second, third, fourth, fifth instar. They're not the reproductives. 84% of them were young, not even laying eggs yet. And of that 84%, 80% of them were first and second instars. Those are the little, just born, just growing. These things right here. And for this side of the audience, these things right here. Okay. What kind of building was he working in? Senior building. It's already been stated by some of the other talks, people over 65 on one study that was done by the University of Kentucky don't react very much to bed bug bites, or they react less. And with seniors, besides not reacting for bed bug bites, when you have these first and second, these look very little ones, what's the other problem? You can't see them. So they don't know they're there, they can't see them, and this problem just festers until 2-3 months down the road, it just gets completely out of hand. It's absolutely critical to figure out ways to find out what's going on in these apartment buildings. Okay, the conclusion, interceptors are more effective than visual inspections for determining the presence or absence of bed bugs. Again, we listen to other speakers say that the human being is not the most efficient bed bug inspector. Canines can be brought into the mix, and they are somewhat effective as well. And he's showing by his applied research that something as simple as a plastic tray with a little bit of talcum powder can find bed bugs. And this is relatively inexpensive. They can be reused. You just wipe them out and put some more talc in and they're ready to use again. The interceptors are good at detecting low level of infestation, the ones that people don't even know are there. Because bed bugs have to wander around to find a meal. Third, every bed bug that's caught in that trap dies. So the interceptors will actually remove some of the bed bugs from the population and will help provide some immediate relief. Is it going to solve the problem? Not necessarily, but it's at least going to make it better for the resident until you can get the other controls in. How do they die?
Can't they just sit there until 100
Okay.
years?
They're cooked. We've looked at literally thousands of these in the course of our practice, and they're all dead. Occasionally we'll see some, just a little bit. It's the talcum powder. As they're walking around with the talcum powder and struggling to get out, that talcum coats their body, and insects breathe through spiracles on the side of their body, and it literally suffocates them. So, right. And so that's another way to do it. Okay.
Excuse me, in its studies, when you said that they have interceptors in the rooms, that they also do visual inspections on those same rooms. In other words, did you do both in the same room?
Question is, when they had the interceptors in the rooms, did they also do a visual inspection? Remember back to the presentation, he said, I go into the motel room, and if I find one bed bug, done. Okay, one bed bug makes the infestation. If they found them in the traps, there was no need to do a visual inspection. They were there. If they didn't find them in the trap, then they went and did a visual inspection. They were letting that, in 10 to 14 days that the traps were in the room do the work for him. So it's more of a passive way. Second thing he wanted to check is, how much do bed bugs move around? What's the dispersal? You have a suite with bed bugs. Do they move around? So he captured bed bugs in an apartment. They catch them live. They use these live traps using carbon dioxide to attract them. They catch them live. Then he marked them with colors. He made some bed bugs red, some blue, and some yellow. This is PhDs in labs, and they have a lot of time on their hands. They catch the bed bugs, they color code them, then they let them go. And then they put the traps out again to see where do they end up. And let's see if we can make this work. Now this is a simulation. I tried to just make a visual so you can see what he was doing. Here's a hallway. Here's 6 apartments. This was his target apartment. He's got his red, blues, and yellows. And he let them go. And what happened? They moved. They moved around. What he found is there's this thing called active dispersal. Bed bugs move around a heck of a lot more than what we thought. Why did we not know this? We didn't know it because for 50 years we didn't do any research on this. The bed bugs became a big issue in Cleveland 5-6 years ago. You know, I remember making the comment that somebody's going to get a PhD just studying how bed bugs move. And sure enough, he's going to do it. They could be in the bathroom too, I guess. I said, that's just a simulation. That's not the real world. They move. They move where? They move adjacent, they'll move up and down, and they'll even move across the hall. So, active dispersal, they do move around. However, why do they move? What's the motivation for that bed bug to move? Doesn't know. More research. We're going to be studying this bed bug a lot more in the future, just to find out why does it do what it does. His take-home message, and this is still continuing research that he's doing, is if you're not inspecting the adjacent apartments, if 306 has bed bugs, if you're not looking at the ones on either side, up and down, and across the hall, you may be missing some infestations because bed bugs are moving. And later on, I'm going to submit something else you should be looking at as well. Okay. Next bit of research, transitioning to Steve Kells from the University of Minnesota. He wanted to study human pheromones. We heard that word a little bit earlier, human pheromones. That's a chemical substance emitted by one species that has an adaptive benefit to another species. That's the dictionary definition. Quite simply, what does that mean? It's a chemical released by us, by humans, that benefits bed bugs. How does it benefit bed bugs? It helps them find us. Our odor is one of the cues. We all know that carbon dioxide is one of the attractants. We know that our heat, our body temperature is another attractant. And it's also our odor. As a species, humans stink. And the bed bugs take advantage of that human odor and are attracted to it. Because if there's an odor of a human, what should be close by? The human, okay? So, he wants to study this. How do you study that? So, he starts off, he takes a fabric pad, he has somebody put it in their shoe and walk around for 8 hours with it. Okay, well, that's going to transfer that odor from your foot to this pad. That's your human pheromones onto that pad. He puts the pad in an arena. That's the pad right there. He puts 7 other clean pads in the arena. He put some bed bugs in the center, let them go, and said, go to it. Well, what did the bed bugs do? Again, this is a simulation. I just wanted it so you could visually see what went on. What he found is most of the bed bugs went to the pad with the human pheromone on it, meaning they were attracted to the human odor, and they stayed longer at it. They didn't, when they went to the pad, they fussed around, and they stayed there longer than they did at the ones where there was no pheromone. Okay. So what does that mean? It means human odor, our pheromones, play a role in bed bug movement. Remember, we're talking about why do they move? Well, our odor is one of the reasons they move. Unwashed clothes, which would be filled with our odor, strewn about, and our other personal stuff all around an apartment, can become an attractive harborage for bed bugs. So let's go to the real world, and you saw pictures about clutter. I don't know, would you call this hoarding, clutter, or just plain sloppy? But there's clothes. Do those clothes appear to be washed? Probably not. So they're filled with human odor. What are bed bugs going to do? That's one of the places. They're looking for a place to hide. So you might as well hide. Maybe all the spots on the bed are taken up. Maybe it's crowded there. So they're going to go hide in the clothes. So Sally or Bill or whoever lives in that apartment gets up, picks up something off the floor, puts it on, and goes out to work, school, hospital, pick your place. Is it possible they transported a bed bug with them? Yeah. Likewise, here's a living. You think somebody sleeps on that couch? You know? Look at this. I'm a bed bug. I'm going to run and hide someplace. I can be attracted to that. I think his message is you got to get rid of the clutter. You got to clean up these spaces where we have our human odor. Another example of how this plays in. This is an apartment. This was a book bag or computer bag that the gentleman leaves on the floor. And he touches it, he picks it up, he puts it over his shoulder, he goes off in and out of his apartment. You think his human pheromones are being transferred to that? Sure. There's the bed bug. Why did a bed bug crawl and want to be on that case? Because there was a human odor to it. So how does that relate and play in to the movement of bed bugs? It sort of seems to me, as a practitioner, that we're just giving bed bugs so many places to hide, we're allowing them to thrive in these environments. Okay, moving on. Steve also wanted to check, does cold temperatures kill bed bugs? We heard a little bit that was related to us before. I'm going to present which actually is his research. Now, where was Steve from? Minnesota. Is it colder in Minnesota? Yeah, it's cold in Minnesota. He wanted to find out, will 0-degree temperatures kill bed bugs? And the answer is yes. But it's got to be 0 degrees for 3 days. If you can get an item to 0 degrees for 3 days, his research says that will kill the bed bugs. If you get it to -11 for 2 days, that will work. Okay, so you're outside, there's the cold. Just taking your furniture, your bed, your mattress, whatever, and putting it on a balcony, putting it on a front porch, whatever, is that going to kill the bed bugs? If you take your couch and just dump it in the snow, leave it outside, will that kill? We'll get 0 degrees in Cleveland. will that kill the bed bugs? The thing is, it's got to be uninterrupted zero. Can't go up to 1 or 2. Because what happens? Sun comes out. Even if it's a cloudy day, there's still that radiant energy from the sun, and it is awfully difficult to maintain uninterrupted zero outside. Now, you may immobilize the bed bugs, but you probably won't kill them unless you get it uninterrupted zero. Okay. So his conclusions are, beware the insulating effects of the fabric and upholstery, first of all. Remember that 0 degrees has got to penetrate through all the fabric. It's got to get to the springs and the inner workings of whatever furniture you put outside. Outdoors, it might not get cold enough, long enough to kill bed bugs. If you really want a controlled environment, maybe you ought to consider a freezer. A chest freezer that's at 0 degrees, put an item in there that you wanted to kill the bed bugs, and keep it there for 3 days. His research says that will kill the bed bugs, and his research says it will kill the eggs. You'll see lots of different numbers and temperatures, and somebody will say it's 4 degrees and whatever. I'm going by the research that we've been able to read that he has published. All right, you got to have some fun too. And again, another PhD candidate with graduate students. Again, what are they doing in the universities? He wanted to know, will drinking affect bed bugs? Okay, it's research. Let's see what happens. How do you do it? He got expired blood from a blood bank, and he took the blood from the blood bank, and some samples he added alcohol to it, and he had different levels of alcohol. I'm just reporting on one of them. He fed the bed bugs from the samples, and he measured how much did they consume and how many eggs did they lay. Piece of research. The bed bugs from the control group, that's the ones that had no alcohol in the blood, they fed the most. The bed bugs that had 0.10% alcohol fed the least. Now, what's the drinking limit in Ohio? I think it's 0.08. So those bed bugs were getting blood from somebody who would have been legally drunk. Okay. The bed bugs that had the alcohol-free blood laid 44 eggs on average. The bed bugs with the 0.10% alcohol laid 12 eggs on average. So they fed less and laid less eggs if they were drinking blood that had alcohol. Now, again, pure research. He's trying to simulate a human that may have had a good night drinking. So his initial findings are bed bugs may prefer alcohol-free blood. The higher the blood alcohol content, the less they fed, and the higher the blood alcohol content, the fewer eggs were laid. Okay. What does that mean? Is this a joke? I mean, what does it mean? It says, first, drinking before bedtime is not going to control an infestation. Bed bugs may consume less blood and lay fewer eggs, but they're still going to be there. And he also says it may add new meaning to that sleep tight thing. Because if you look in the dictionary, tight also means someone who's somewhat drunk. Is that stupid research? What if he would have studied it using garlic? What if he would have studied it using anything else? I think what he's leading up to is there something that we would eat or consume that might cause bed bugs not to want to feed on us? Is that research? Yeah. That's what these universities do. So the fact that he chose alcohol as a start, he may work along and see, are there any other substances? Or maybe there may be a medication someplace down the road that you would take, a bed bug would bite you and would then die. So, this is where research may take us, but it's an attempt. And I'm up here as a reporter trying to show you here's what's going on in this bed bug world. Okay, next one is DNA testing. I'll get to that. DNA testing is 99.9% accurate. This is the CSI stuff, the crime scene analysis. I mean, they can, bed bugs, being a live creature, leave their DNA all around, and science is able to detect the DNA. You can go on Amazon.com and buy a DNA test kit for bed bugs. Does it work? Now, we'll listen to somebody who has done this.
So what you would do is you would take the swab out. I would start with the areas surrounding the bed first, swab underneath. Literally, the end of the swab is where we're collecting the sample. And so you want to almost roll it back and forth, up underneath any areas that bed bugs are likely to travel. Around the floor, the boards on the floor, the carpeting, because they've walked there and we're trying to cross their path to collect the DNA. I would then move to the baseboards, swab along the baseboards using the same swab. And I would ultimately finish with the bed. Pull up most of the bedding, as you never know, it may have been washed last night, and I would go along the crack between the mattress and the box spring, swab along the creases, up under the folds, anywhere that bed bugs would travel. And what I'm doing basically is just collecting pieces or remnants of what they've left behind that maybe we can't see with the naked eye. So, and then I would go ahead and seal my swab. If I do see any bugs or signs of bugs, I could also put the little bug in there and seal it back up and send it to the lab.
So is this really expensive?
It's not. It's only $15 a test. We try to keep it affordable so that you can use it quickly and easily when you go and do an initial inspection.
And how long does it take to get an answer?
If you, once the results are received in the lab, or once the sample is received in the lab, we should have it to you that afternoon. So if you go in and you take a test on Monday, you send it overnight to the lab, we receive it Tuesday morning, you'll have it Tuesday afternoon.
This video is not an endorsement of services provided by Research Associate Labs. If you have more questions, you should contact the lab directly.
So the technology is there. With a swab, you can go to a mattress, a box spring, a room. You can swab your, if bed bugs, you think you have a bed bug bite, you can swab that bite, send this in, and if the bed bug left the DNA there, they will tell you with 99.9% accuracy. These tests work. Are they practical? Well, the DNA, a bed bug will leave its DNA, and even when the bed bugs are gone, that DNA may still be on the mattress, or on a bed frame, or on a headboard. It could still be there for a year. So you don't know for sure, is it an active or an old infestation? Second, if you get a negative result, you do all the little swabbing and it comes back no bed bugs, does that mean there's no bed bugs? What it means is you swabbed areas and a bed bug didn't walk or rest in that spot. So you might have missed an area where bed bugs were. If you want to analyze a particular home or apartment and different rooms, you have to do separate swabs for each different report you want. If you use the swab through a one-bedroom apartment and did the living room, dining room, and bedroom, you'd get a report for that whole area. If you wanted to know the living room separate, the bedroom separate, then you have to do two different reports. And if a swab test is positive, it's strongly recommended that you follow that up with a visual inspection or one of these interceptor trap inspections, just to confirm it. But the technology is there. How could this be applied? Think, you're an apartment manager, and somebody wants to move into your building. And you ask the question, have you ever had bed bugs? And what answer do you get? Yeah, no, never had. Well, you might be able to take your little swab and say, let's just check your bedding. You do the swab and it gets sent out to a lab and gets analyzed, and you can find out if the areas you tested had any bed bugs. Is it practical? Who knows? It's just another way of finding out what's going on. Okay. A little more on DNA. This is a study, and again, it's in an apartment situation done by Ed Vargo, who's a professor at North Carolina State University. He wanted to ask the question, how often are bed bugs brought into the building? How often are they really bringing new bed bugs into my building? So he arranged to look at 3 different buildings. One of them was in Raleigh, North Carolina. 2 of them were in Jersey City and New Jersey. 17 suites in one, and you can see the numbers there, 9 and 5 in the other 2. He collected bed bugs, he did swab tests, he's trying to find all the DNA that was left around by the bed bugs. Here's the building. This was the building in Raleigh. There were 17 suites with bed bugs. These are the ones that had the bed bugs. Some of them are right up and down, because again, bed bugs move. Some are right next to each other. Here's up and down again. When he analyzed the ones from Raleigh, he found there was a very, very low genetic diversity. Okay, what does that mean? They probably all came from the same source. Somehow or other, they all had the same male and female accounted for all these bed bugs. He calls that there was probably a single introduction. In this building, it's likely there was one person who brought the bed bugs in, and from there, they spread. Now, you can understand why they would spread next to each other and up and down, because they've shown us that bed bugs move. But how'd they get over here? All these other ones are sort of clustered. Now, again, this is research, and I'm trying to look at it from how do I use this practically? Well, what I'm seeing here is, I understand the movement here, but I just wondered, does this person visit somebody else in the building? Do they watch their children? Is there, what goes on after 8 o'clock at night in some of these apartment buildings? Who visits whom, who sleeps where? And that could account. It's not just inspecting the apartments on either side and up and down. I'm strongly advocating, if you find an apartment with bed bugs, you want to talk to the resident and say, who do you visit? Do you hang out in the community room a lot? Do you see somebody on a regular basis? Do you play cards at night with somebody? What are your habits that might lead to the spread of bed bugs in my building? There's a question?
A lot of the apartment buildings have a wash area, so they're bringing baskets down and leaving the baskets.
The common, she said a lot of buildings have a common laundry room, one laundry room and a main laundry room, and that's an exchange point, as are the lobbies of the building, as are the offices in buildings. And knowing that, those are areas you'd want to monitor and inspect on a regular basis. Okay. I got 2 or 3 more slides, then we'll do the questions, because we've got some time for that. In Jersey City, now that's New Jersey. New Jersey, New York has got a much heavier bed bug problem than Raleigh, North Carolina. There he found the genetic diversity was a little greater, it had more diversity, and his conclusion was there was probably 2 different sources of bed bugs brought in. But basically, what I think from his study, do I have something here? Yeah, the conclusions. Within a building, it's likely that there's a single introduction and it spreads from there. There's a lot of inbreeding that goes on in these bed bugs. Once they're adults, they start breeding with themselves back and forth, brothers, sisters, that whole thing. And that's a whole other bit of research that's way beyond what I'm even capable of understanding. And the DNA similarity that he found confirms that there's both an active dispersal. We said the active dispersal was the bed bug moving, and a passive dispersal, which is us moving it, people moving the bed bugs. Somebody taking their laundry basket that's right next to their bed. Sad case, somebody taking their wheelchair, which ends up next to their bed, which is loaded with your human care rooms. Bed bugs get on the wheelchair, they go down, go visit somebody else's apartment, or park in the lobby of the building, and it gives the opportunity for bed bugs to spread. So the research is confirming what we already, I think, have seen. There's this active and passive dispersal of bed bugs. Okay. So he's saying is if you know they're going to be introduced infrequently, put your efforts into early detection. Do things within your property, whether it be a hospital, an apartment building, a school, just to make sure you're constantly doing early detection, finding out if they are there. If you're in a city with a high bed bug pressure, Columbus, Ohio, high bed bug pressure. Cincinnati, high bed bug pressure. New York, Philadelphia. Cleveland is getting there. I don't think we're quite as high as some of the other cities. There's just a lot of bed bug pressure. You've got to find ways to stop them at the door. Inspecting the things that are coming in. Being a little more disciplined in the things that residents are bringing into the building. And then he's also concluded that us people, that's the residents, the guests, visitors, tradespeople, working from apartment to apartment, we may be moving bed bugs around more than what we had thought. Okay, and on that happy note, we go to the conclusion. This is from Michael Potter. Mike is a professor at the University of Kentucky. He was at the forefront of this bed bug outbreak back 10 years ago. He has authored some of the finest research and some of the publications on bed bugs. And I had a chance to listen to him about 2 months ago at a conference talk. And here's what he had to say. Regarding the bed bug problem, there is no silver bullet. This bug is the Houdini of the insect world. It's got an amazing ability to adapt to the insecticides that we spray on it. The bed bug problem is alive and well, and I just do not see that we're going to get out of this anytime in the near future. That's one of the foremost experts in the country telling us, better knuckle down and get these immediate problems resolved, because the pressure from bed bugs is not going away anytime soon. Adjust your budgets, adjust your habits, adjust your own lifestyle, because they're here for a while. We just don't have an immediate answer. So what is the solution? I heard DDT. Wouldn't work. If we had it today, the only bugs it would kill would be Harold Harlan's bed bugs, because the resistance is out there in DDT. They were resistant to DDT in the 50s, so it wouldn't work. Solution is this, is funding for more research, is supporting the research and the people and encouraging people to go into entomological research at these universities, because that's where we increase our knowledge base. That's how we figure out what's going on. Gene White was just at the conference where he was down there for 2 or 3 days, and he hasn't had a chance to get his notes ready, and I'm ready to pick his brain to see what he just learned from listening to the researchers for the last couple of days. So with that, I guess we can do questions. I'll try to answer them. Remember, I'm not the scientist, I'm just the reporter.
Thank you, and thank you all for staying for the final presentation today. I'm really delighted to be part of the conference to look in detail on what we can do as a community on a growing problem that we're seeing in housing court. When I first was elected to the bench, I had issues of property maintenance and landlord-tenant water shutoffs. And now I'm facing condemned, abandoned properties, property owners who own properties in the city of Cleveland from all over the world, Cayman Islands, Belize, just about every place in the world that there's property ownership. But in addition to all of those issues that we work with in the housing court, we're seeing the issue increasingly of bed bugs. And we are a court that is a specialized court, a specialized docket, having to do with issues of real estate, tenants, landlords, property owners, health department, health codes, fire codes. But the issue increasingly that we see on a weekly basis involves problems as relate to properties, and increasingly we're seeing them with bed bugs. Now, from a national perspective, in 2010, the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the EPA issued a joint statement regarding the resurgence of bed bugs. 5 years ago, it would be unusual to have a bed bug case in housing court. And the statement that they made noted that there's training and public education needed. That's the most important element as a problem-solving court, is training and education. Now, I do have an additional advantage of fines and jail time, which hopefully will be an incentive for people to take training and education to work on this problem. Now, there are a number of things going on across the country concerning bed bugs, and laws have passed, vary in scope. For example, some require a question regarding infestation be included on real estate disclosures. And if you're familiar with the lead statement, the HUD statement that's required by federal, state, and local ordinance, they're also requiring in Hawaii that there's a disclosure if there has been a bed bug infestation. And others, states are taking a more comprehensive approach, laying out legal obligations and rights for landlords and tenants, such as in New York and Arizona. And there's pending legislation in Massachusetts, New Jersey, North Carolina, here in Ohio, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. Now, looking at the state trends, the New York City Administrative Code has bed bug specific provisions. Landlords are to maintain rental premises free from bed bug infestation. Landlords must provide a 1-year bed bug history to new tenants when they move in. And if you look at Arizona's statute, landlords must maintain residential units free of infestation of bed bugs, provide existing tenants with a copy of the bed bug statute, sounds a lot like the lead disclosure statute, provide new and existing tenants with educational materials, and where the landlord fails to timely treat the infestation, the tenant may do so. They may treat the infestation and deduct the greater of $500 or half the monthly rent. Now, the tenant would have to hire a licensed exterminator, submit the invoice to the landlord in order to get that reduction. And under Arizona law, the tenant must maintain the unit free of bed bugs. They may not move in infested materials into the unit. They must notify the landlord of the presence of bed bugs within 3 days of discovery and comply with the protocols such as pre-treatment activities and reporting of the presence of bed bugs after treatment. They also may agree to be responsible for treatment if they're renting a single-family dwelling. So what's happening in Ohio? Well, we're moving right ahead, and Senate Bill 39 decided to study the problem and make recommendations. House Bill 129 seeks to establish a bug awareness program within a bed bug awareness program within the Department of Health. And Senate Bill 360 is to require notice of infestation to certain healthcare or other providers. So 2 of these are in committee and 1 has not been assigned to a committee. So we are seeing in the Cleveland Municipal Court Housing Division an influx of complaints about bed bugs and cases about bed bugs. And in fact, you've heard the statistics from the Cleveland Department of Health, and the complaints of bed bugs in the City of Cleveland Department of Health have doubled over the last 2 years. And criminal code violations seen in the housing court have increased. And in fact, within the last 2 years, we're starting to see bed bug cases and increasing at a great pace. Now, many people say, well, I'm a property owner, I can be held criminally liable for infestation of bed bugs, and the answer under our code is yes. There's also complaints of bed bugs on our civil inspection docket. And this is where the city is ordered to go out when there's been a complaint through landlord-tenant action. That has increased and has doubled from 2011 to 2010. And our court has established a task force internal to the court concerning bed bugs from every department, because not only are we seeing an increase in complaints of bed bugs, bed bug cases, we also are seeing introduction of bed bugs into the offices in the Justice Center, just like any other office building. And so it is our role to be proactive. We are also working with the General Division, Judge Adrian, and the Clerk's Office, Earl Turner, to try to develop a task force so an introduction of bed bugs does not become an infestation, because it could get out of hand with the volume and number of people that visit the Justice Center every single day. And it's interesting to note of the inspections on complaints with the bed bugs, only half of the complaints reveal that there actually are bed bugs. So there appears to be a gap in the public's perception and understanding of what the problem is. Now, what is the duty in the city of Cleveland concerning bed bugs? Well, and it's similar throughout the state. All dwelling structures in the premises shall be maintained free from sources of breeding, harborage, and infestation by insects, vermin, or rodents. Our ordinance does not specifically name bed bugs, but the codified ordinances list it as an infestation of pets. And many municipalities have similar ordinances. Now, what are the landlord's responsibilities? Well, landlords are required to comply with the requirements of all applicable building, housing, health, and safety codes that materially affect health and safety. They are required to make all repairs and do whatever is reasonably necessary to put and keep the premises in a fit and habitable condition. And you'll hear this, fit and habitable, as being a requirement that flows throughout the law of landlord-tenant. And they must keep all common areas and premises safe and sanitary. So what are the tenants' responsibilities? Well, they have to keep part of the premises that they occupy safe and sanitary, dispose of rubbish, garbage, and other waste in a clean, safe, and sanitary manner, and comply with requirements imposed on tenants by all state and local health codes, housing codes, and safety codes. And so this is the requirement for tenants under our Ohio Landlord-Tenant Code. Now, there is an implied warranty of habitability. The lease agreement between the landlord and tenant is a contractual relationship with an implied warranty of habitability. Implied warranty is in addition to the statutory duties. Attempt to waive the implied warranty of habitability in a residential lease, such as putting in this apartment is rented as is or house as is unconscionable according to Ohio law. There are similar requirements in other states, and the properties become that they are habitable, and it cannot be waived away by contract. Now, there is the Anderson case, which I noted here. which involved conditions requiring repair at the premises. It wasn't about bed bugs, but repair at the premises, and it illustrates lease provisions in an attempt to shift or contract away the warranty of habitability. And so, if you want more details on that, write down the site or see me afterwards. Now, it was 80 years ago, in 1930, that there was a case of first impression on bed bugs. And a landlord had sued for unpaid rent. The tenant counterclaimed, asserting that when he moved into the unit, he found it was infested with bed bugs. The matter was tried to a jury, which found the infestation was due to conditions in other units in the building. And the court found that the tenant was therefore constructively evicted. And this case was from 1930, and it was really a long time ago, and we're just starting to see cases from 2008. There aren't many cases on the issue of bed bugs in Ohio. However, the constructive eviction, that tenant couldn't live in the apartment with bed bugs. So then from 1930, we move forward to 2011, and there is a case from Lucas County, Kenwood Gardens Association versus Shorter. The tenants admitted that they brought the bed bug infestation to the premises. Upon notice of the infestation, the landlord promptly hired a professional exterminator. The tenants failed to properly prepare the unit for treatment. And then, in the case in Toledo, the tenants admitted that they brought the infestation, and because of their lack of cooperation, the treatment was ineffective. The landlord notified the tenants that without their cooperation, the condition could not be corrected. So the court in that case decided the tenants breached the lease by failing to pay rent during the infestation. The landlord did not breach the implied warranty of habitability, where tenants failed to cooperate with the extermination efforts. Therefore, there was judgment for the landlord on the claim for money damages in the Kenwood Garden case. And this case suggests that the courts will consider the level of cooperation and treatment regimes and the impact of the tenant conduct on that treatment. In fact, last year at the Cleveland Housing Court, we had an eviction claim based upon the tenant's failure to cooperate with treatment. The matter was a CMHA public housing case, and the premises involved was a multi-suite building. The housing authority had inspected and given the tenant several opportunities to prepare his unit for treatment. The tenant failed to properly prepare the unit, and after several attempts, the housing authority brought the eviction, asserting the tenant's failure to prepare was a breach of the lease and the tenant's statutory obligations. The court granted the eviction, noting the failure to comply with preparation for treatment. There's another case that we view as important, the Spring Hill Townhomes versus Pounds, where the tenants had occupied a unit for 2.5 years before the bed bug problem. The landlord exterminated and sought reimbursement from the tenants. And the parties made a repayment agreement, agreed to pay the landlord back for the extermination services. But the tenants only made 2 payments. And so the landlord brought the eviction action and a money claim asserting back rent and the balance of the rent payment. The court decided in that case that the repayment agreement for extermination services between the landlord and the tenants was enforceable, absent evidence of economic duress caused by the landlord. However, the landlord, because the agreement did not mention the lease, the security deposit could not be applied against the balance owed under the extermination cost repayment agreement. So the landlord could not, in that case, deduct from the security deposit the cost of the pest control service. Yes. Yes. In that case, they made a side agreement. Well, here's what the cost of the services were, but they didn't mention it as being part of the landlord-tenant agreement, the lease for the premises, which they could amend, provided both of them agreed to it. So this decision sheds some light on how courts may view repayment agreements or agreements to shift or share the cost of extermination where the tenant is likely to have brought the infestation to the premises. However, causation remains open, and the housing court is unaware of any case law in Ohio or otherwise dealing with agreements to shift or share the cost when causation could not be determined. What caused the problem? And I'm going to talk a little bit about a case that we had where there was an issue of causation. Now, what is the cause? And that's something that we look at with the court. What is the type of dwelling? Is it single family or multifamily? What are the lease provisions? Have there been inspections? What is the history of infestation in the building or that unit? The history of the infestation at the tenant's previous location. And whether the parties are informed about the issues of bed bugs. Now, this year we've noted on our inspection docket from the court that the complaints about bed bugs have doubled. However, in only about half of the complaints has it been confirmed. Some of the other factors that we look at, whether the infestation was timely reported, whether the infestation was professionally treated, the extent and location of the infestation, and then the opinion of a properly credentialed exterminator. Now, the exterminator, this certainly would be useful, but we're unaware of any exterminator who has been able to make the statement that this was caused by the tenant. They're able to tell us that there are bed bugs there, but they can't tell us if the bed bugs were brought in. So we did have a case in Cleveland in 2008, and that was really the first bed bug case that we saw at the Cleveland Housing Court. The tenant had suffered bed bug bites for 2 months after she moved into the unit. She notified the landlord, who promptly exterminated. But the tenant never returned to the unit and disposed of her personal property, including a newly purchased bed. And as part of the contested claim for money damages that the landlord sought against the tenant sought compensation for the loss of property. Look, I had to throw out my bed, I had to throw out my furniture, and this was a case that it's helpful to understand what the causation was. So the evidence that was provided in this court case, the infestation was confined to the tenant's bedroom. There was no infestation in the wall or baseboards of the bedroom. The majority of the bed bugs and casts were on the tenant's bookcase that were adjacent to the bed. And the landlord's exterminator was unable to state with reasonable certainty how that introduction of bed bugs occurred in that apartment. The tenant was uninformed about bed bugs and did not seek information on how to manage the situation, just went to the extreme of throwing everything out. And so the court therefore concluded the tenant failed to establish that the landlord or a previous tenant or an adjacent unit was responsible for introducing bed bugs. And the landlord therefore was not liable to the tenant for the possessions she threw away due to the infestation. So think back to that 1930 case, constructive eviction, if the place is so infested that you can't live there, and then think about this case, there has to be some proof. So the expert was unable to give an opinion as to the causation. So what may have been important is that the tenant acted disposing of her bed and other possessions without gathering accurate information. She just threw them all out. And she had not gathered any information on adjacent units in the building or the history of infestation. So what an expert may or may not be required based upon the circumstances could be produced as evidence in the case, and there has to be basic knowledge about bed bugs and infestations and the history of the unit. So what does all of this mean? Well, it means that there has to be education and awareness. landlords, tenants, property owners, building owners, health providers. There need to be inspections prior to renting or moving in, somewhat similar to inspections for lead or other hazards. There should be addendums to clarify what the rights are in case things go wrong, and what the obligations of each of the parties are. There should be a program for integrated pest management at the property, and there need to be periodic inspections of the apartment and at the move-out. And then payment agreements, who pays for this? So all the stakeholders must work together. Now, there are a number of resources, and here is, look what I got on the street for free. What if it has bed bugs? Free bed bugs. And we had a case about 6 weeks ago. The tenant, who was a refugee, would go out and recycle mattresses, bring them home, and strip them down to their springs and take them up to the scrapyard. Well, the property was infested with bed bugs, and they were just brought in. And you may drive around the city and see what is left of a mattress carcass on the tree lawn where these mattresses have been stripped out. But there has to be an education, and therefore the court a few weeks ago, in conjunction with the county and city health department, bed bug task force, gave a seminar for landlords on what to look for. And this particular landlord, who was fined $2,000, and once he abated the nuisance of bed bugs, the fine was suspended by 90%. He's on a year of community control sanction because the probation officer from the court will go out and check. And what he has allowed is the tenants to clutter up the apartment, to bring the mattresses home, so he's failing to make sure that he is keeping the property in a situation that will not cause the return of the bed bug and a greater bed bug infestation. So we hope he will understand that he has to enforce the rules about clutter, cleanliness, and used furniture on his property. Here are a couple of helpful websites in addition to what you see from CuyahogaBedBug.com and the other websites concerning the law, landlords, bedbug guides, lease addendums. And the point, I think, is, for all of us, is that do you want to spend $10,000 to target your property to try to eliminate the insect infestation, or do you want to spend a little money, even though it has a bed bug on it, you want to spend a little money to try to prevent an introduction of bed bugs from becoming an infestation. This is what we work on at the housing court every single day. We run a housing clinic. There are housing court specialists that are here, 2 magistrates, and so if you don't have time to ask questions directly, we'd be happy to answer them right after the seminar. And I want to thank the task force for putting this together. Extremely important for the work that we do. Are there any questions?